Hello everyone, I'm back. I'm doing a little bit different Copic tutorial today. Scandinavian style with Distress Inks is very popular and very beautiful way of coloring, and I actually have quite a few Distress Inks, and I taught myself how to color similar to them, but I'm so used to pulling out my Copics. It's such a faster way to color. Working with Distress Inks does take a long time, and I'm a little bit of an impatient person, so I knew there had to be a way to color with Copics to get them to look like Distress Inks. And some people use Copics and then use their Distress Inks over them, but this video today will show you how to kind of layer the colors a little bit to get your Copics to look more vintage and Scandinavian style. I've been working on this for a couple weeks, trying to get it down and studying a lot of Scandinavian style images, and I think I've got a pretty good version, what I think is pretty good anyways, and I found that it's very easy to do. You might have to use a few more colors and go back and layer a little bit, but it's not hard. And so today I'm going to show you how I colored this little magnolia girl to look like she was colored with Distress Inks. I have my image a little bit on a slant here so that my camera gives you a better view, and I apologize beforehand if my dogs bark. So one thing with distress images using the Distress Inks is you'll always notice on the images, and you can, Google this and look up different images, but their edges are always very dark. There tends to be more of a, I would say, grungy, it's not really a good word, but in the corners they tend to use a grayish brown to kind of distress their edges a little bit, but definitely the edges are always kept dark, and there's a lot of light, so the colors are kept pretty light with maybe touches of dark now and again. So we're going to start, I'm going to do her skin first and show you how I do her face. Scandinavian style, they tend to have a lot of light in the center of the face and very dark edges. So we're going to start with that. And the colors I use for this are E13, E11, and E00. And I found that W3 is a great color to kind of grunge up those edges. It's kind of a brownish gray. So as always, I use my darkest color first, and I'm going to go around and just lay down my E13. Not really worried about being perfect or blending right now. I'm going to take my E11. I'm going to work around again. Making sure that I leave that center part light. And then I'm going to take my E00 and I'm going to kind of flick towards the center, kind of pushing a little bit, and then so you're just kind of flicking the color, so you're blending those lines and you're bringing it to the center. And then I'm going to lightly go over that center. I don't want a lot of color there. And again, to get this right, you may have to work at it a couple times, because if you've used Copics before, you know that when you're coloring with them and the ink is wet, it looks darker, but then of course it dries lighter, so you always have to go back and darken it up. And again, like I said, this is a layering process. Not hard, but you just have to work with your colors a bit. And that was E13 that I added again. I'm going back with E11, and I'm flicking towards the center of her face. And I'm going to take my E00 and all the way from the edges to the center I'm flicking. That's Suzanne's technical term, flicking. And if you find that the center maybe isn't light enough, you can always take your colorless blender. And what I found is if you gently, I mean very, very lightly, rub through the center. You don't want to push down the blender into the face, because then you're going to start pushing the ink out and you're going to get that funny ring. So just lightly feather over the center of the face. And again, you might have to go back and just clean up some of those edges. And this is where I take the W3. Again, this is kind of a brownish gray, a warm gray. And I'm just going in on those edges just to darken and shadow them a bit. Not a lot, but just enough. And because YouTube only lets me do 10 minutes, which I find extremely hard to do, this video is probably going to be broken up into 3 different parts to get you through the whole image, so I'm just warning you now. I'll try not to chit-chat too much. So then I'm going to go in, I'm going to do her neck, her hands, and her legs. And the same thing. Very dark E13. I don't know what the comparable color in Distress Inks would be. I haven't used them in a while. This is E11. But these are the colors that I found work pretty closely. This is E00. And each time I'm going to take that W3 and right in there in the corners, darken it up a little bit. Move this up a little bit. And then to do her hand, just going around the edges a little bit where it might be shadowed. This is E13. Taking E11. You can probably hear my dog in the background. She's just aching to bark and let herself be heard. She cannot help it. My other one is sleeping, hopefully, through the whole video. So again, I'm flicking that darker up because I want to keep a good portion of that light. And then I'm going to take the W3. I'm going to darken these edges just a bit. And for her hand, I want a little bit more light. So I'm taking my colorless blender, and again, I'm just feathering it a bit. I'll take it over her face one more time too, just the center part, just lightly feathering. Moving on to our other hand, E13 again. And then I'm going to take my E00, and I'm just kind of pushing that E13 out. Then I'm going to take the W3 again to darken up a few of these areas. Legs, same thing. Keeping these edges darker, coming in or a little bit around those dimples on her knees. And under her dress, of course, where it would be shadowed. I'm not using E11 this time, I'm going directly with my E00. A lot of times when you find that you're doing smaller areas, you don't always need those 3 colors. And if you kind of flick your color from the darkest in, you can blend it and still have a lot of light in your image.